They are calling me a terrorist. A terrorist. I'm not kidding and I'm not joking. Let's talk about it. So when I woke up this morning, I was browsing my phone, checking the news, just trying to see what happened while asleep. The things that one might typically do. And I saw something that I did not expect. I first saw an article by The Independent, and then I went and found Aaron Reed's article. And it turns out that Thursday night, apparently, the Heritage Foundation decided to try to urge the FBI to designate trans advocacy as terrorism. I'm not exaggerating. Here's the article. And instead of doing what I normally do, where I cover parts of articles or I just discuss my thoughts on a subject, like kind of point by point, this video is probably going to end up being more of a rant style video. So if you are not in the mood for that, or you feel like you can't handle something like that right now, then I will see you in the next video. Have a good night. I hope you end up having a good day and chill. If you are feeling crushed or hopeless right now, then I hope that you'll stay with me, because my take on this is a little bit different than I've seen from a lot of other trans people that are obviously very upset about this news, as I'm also upset about it. But I am not upset about it in the sense where I feel like I want to cry about this, or I feel like I'm hopeless. I am resolute about this, all right? We need to fight this. But let's just start with a few points first, and then I'm going to really dive in to exactly how I feel about all of this stuff. So Aaron's article is Republicans push FBI to designate trans advocacy as violent extremism inside the Project 2025 organization's proposal. Now, I'm just going to scroll down here because this main graphic right here is what we need to talk about. So essentially, the Heritage Foundation is trying to suggest to the FBI that they label transgender ideology-inspired violent extremism, or TIVE, as a domestic terrorist designation. And they're literally calling transgender ideology is a belief that wholly or partially rejects fundamental science about human sex being biologically determined before birth, binary and immutable, transgender ideology-inspired violence and extremism. This threat encompasses the potentially unlawful use or threat of force or violence, including incitement to unlawful violence and furtherance of ideological agendas derived from transgender ideology and related beliefs. Then within the related beliefs, they include that violence is justified against people who oppose transgender ideology, who decline to support or affirm transgender ideology, or are silent or indifferent regarding TI. Or 2, the belief that opposing TI, decline to support or affirm TI, or remaining silent or indifferent regarding TI, A, itself constitutes a form of violence towards people who identify as any variant of transgender or gender nonconforming, B, is a true threat to the existence of such persons, or C, poses an imminent threat to such persons' emotional, psychological, or physical safety, including through self-harm or suicide. Now, let me just say, first and foremost, that we are not an ideology. We are an existent people. Labeling us as an ideology is just a way for them to spin a narrative that we somehow are like converted into some extremist thought. This is ridiculous. We are just existing people, just identifying as trans, taking medication, getting medical care, and possibly, surgery, social transition, name changes. That's what makes you trans. You don't become part of some group that has some ideology that we all agree with. Trans people are diverse across political spectrums. There are the Blair Whites. There are the Caitlyn Jenners that obviously are right-wing, that don't share whatever this imagined ideology is that they are trying to conjure up. Completely whole cloth make it up. So I find it strange that they're trying to use parts of the definition of terrorism using unlawful threats of force or violence, including incitement to unlawful violence and furtherance of ideological agendas. Who has said that you should go and do unlawful things? I've never advocated for people to act unlawful. I've never advocated for people to go and harm other people. And yet just being a trans person is enough to lump you in with this transgender ideology. Now, this just so happens to come right on the tail end of in Michigan, they introduced state legislation that essentially says that any depictions of trans people, any written text about trans people, any pictures depicting trans people, so like your social media posts, Facebook, Twitter, if you upload Instagram photos, just existing in public, so like just you being yourself, they're trying to designate as pornography. And these are the Republicans in Michigan. So they are saying that, oh, well, they want TIVE to be designated as like a extremist belief, as if like, people that don't affirm you or are indifferent or don't care about you or who oppose you are like having it be a threat to your emotional, psychological, or physical safety. Well, that is TIVE. What the fuck do you call what they're doing in Michigan then? To just say, well, you will be designated as pornography, our existence. So we can't go in public, no matter, like, even if you're fully clothed and just going to work, that's pornography. If you post on your private Facebook, that's pornography. If you write your feelings down or you just talk about being trans in an article that you pen online, like an online blog, well, that according to this, that is some type of extremist ideology as well. They have broadened the net of what terrorism is. I mean, this is a farce to such an extent that it becomes meaningless. Because let's be real here, okay? I find it very telling that they want to designate trans people as having some type of terrorist ideology. Meanwhile, the KKK, they don't designate them as a domestic terrorist group. They don't designate Christians a domestic terrorist group, despite the fact that Timothy McVeigh exploded a building in Oklahoma City in a protest of abortion. But that doesn't count. That doesn't label all Christians as extremists. You have Christian nationalists that routinely advocate killing people that they disagree with, but those people don't count as domestic terrorists. You have Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and these types of groups showing up to Pride or showing up to drag queen story hours with loaded rifles surrounding buildings where people are peacefully gathering to read library books. That doesn't count as extremism or terrorism. People selling shirts that say kill your local groomer or kill your local pedophile at Republican conventions after they have spent over a year and a half, 2 years, labeling LGBT people as groomers and pedophiles. So they call us groomers and pedophiles, then they sell merchandise encouraging people to take extrajudicial actions against us and unlawful violence against us. And that doesn't count as terrorism. So the KKK is not a terrorist group in this country. People showing up with assault rifles with the intimidation there and wearing shirts that say like kill your local groomer while they're calling us groomers and stuff like that, that's not terrorism. But us just existing counts as terrorism, despite us not all being part. Like, I don't know, might be weird for cis people to realize, but not all trans people are just part of some transgender organization. Like, there's no Trans Inc. that we all belong to, okay? We just exist. There's an acronym for us, an LGBTQ plus community, as a vague, nebulous community, as in it's a category that when someone says trans or gay or lesbian, they mean people under this umbrella, but there is no actual organization that all of us belong to. We all disagree on too much. There are right-wing conservatives. There are groyper trans people. Maybe they have a lot of internalized transphobia, but they exist. I don't understand this. This is ridiculous. Waking up and finding out that a group is suggesting that trans people be labeled as terrorists, unironically, I felt like this would be equivalent to them trying to say that like my tits are WMDs, literally. I mean, we have 9/11 happens, and do we label all Muslims as terrorists? We shouldn't. That would be really dumb. We know who the terrorists are. We know it's Al Qaeda. We know that Hamas is a terrorist group, but there's innocent people in Gaza. And it's like it's difficult for Republicans to figure any of this stuff out. They can't understand the difference of there being some hate groups, like the KKK being a mostly Christian nationalist hate group, versus your average Christian walking around. All right. If I like how Brian Kilmeade can get on Fox News and say that we should just lethally inject the homeless. 800,000 homeless people, a lot of mental illness within that community. And he's saying that, well, because they're mentally ill and they're homeless, we should just involuntarily like euthanize them. Something like 70,000 homeless people are veterans that have PTSD, or they lost their home from financial hardship, or they couldn't recover from medical hardship, and they end up being homeless. Those are veterans of our military. Oh, well, wait a minute. You're saying that you should just lethally inject all these veterans. Are you going to add that, well, wait a minute, they have military training and they know how to use like battle tactics and they know how to use rifles and stuff like that. So does that justify it? Because now you're going to say, well, some of these people could be dangerous. And because some homeless people attack some people like in a subway or whatever, now you're going to label all homeless people as terrorists or dangerous. That is really stupid, considering that the people calling for mass murder are Fox News hosts. But that's not being a terrorist. Calling for mass murder. Nancy Mace, South Carolina rep, and Ronnie Jackson, a Texas state rep, both of them said that trans people should all be rounded up and put in mental institutions. And I think she said something like a straitjacket with a big metal lock on it or whatever. Oh, but that's not a terroristic threat. Matt Walsh says that all LGBT people, so this would just be like, this would include gay people, lesbian people, bisexual, all LGBT people should be designated terrorists. All of us. With no justification for any of this. They've got 3 or 4 shooters that they're going to point to, mass shooters, and say, well, those are trans people, therefore, you know, there must be like a trans terrorism going on, despite the fact there's thousands of cis-het white mass shooters, and cis-het white men aren't labeled as terrorists for some reason. It's very obvious that the political game that they're playing, in the same way that it was obvious the narrative that the FBI was trying to craft around Tyler Robinson, first saying that, oh, they must be trans. Then it turns out that they weren't trans. Then they're saying, oh, they have trans stuff written on the bullets. And it turns out that there's no trans stuff written on the bullets. And then they're like, well, maybe he has like a trans girlfriend or something. And that's not confirmed. That's still up in the air. But then they decide like to release messages. Oh yeah. Then they said that they had a manifesto from the shooter, but it was destroyed. But they also can still recover the information, even though it was like utterly destroyed. They're still going to figure it out. Like there's just so much information that is strange coming out about this. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but what I will say is Kash Patel, who is obviously a puppet of Trump, should have recused himself instead of directly trying to take that investigation over. They should have let this stuff come out in discovery in the courts with a fair trial for Tyler. Instead, the FBI, as Kash said, we're being so transparent as possible and just pushing everything out as soon as we got it. So they ended up releasing misinformation, which, by the way, ironically enough, misinformation about that very shooting was justified to cancel Jimmy Kimmel, saying that he said that the shooter was MAGA, and that was incorrect misinformation. Therefore, he had to be canceled and taken off the air, despite the fact that Fox News, which hosts Brian Kilmeade, who once again said we should mass murder the homeless involuntarily, right? That same network had to pay like $70 billion because they were lying about election fraud in the 2020 election against Smartmatic and Dominion, both those companies. And in the court case, Fox defended themselves by saying that they're not actually news, they're entertainment. And yet they end up reporting misinformation all the time. They lied and lied and lied. And there's all these text messages and stuff. The reason why they had to say that they were entertainment and not actually news was because it was very obvious that all these people in the background, their anchors and such, knew that they were lying, like Tucker Carlson. That's why they had to release Tucker Carlson from Fox News. And it's like, if reporting misinformation is enough to get you canceled and taken off the air, as in Kimmel, then Fox News should have been dead and buried months ago. That company should no longer exist. All of them would be canceled at this point. It just seems ridiculous to say that calling for threats of like literally go kill the homeless. Oh, well, as long as he apologizes, then that doesn't count as terrorism. So there was another representative running a couple years ago named Mark Robinson, and I believe he was on the ballot in 2024. And at one point in time, he had said that LGBT people should be lined up against a wall and shot in the back of the head, and our families should be executed. That doesn't count as even though he's MAGA, that doesn't count as terrorism, even though that person was a lieutenant governor, and I think he's running for the governorship or another state representative position. But that doesn't count as terrorism. So I'm going to tell you right now, if you're a trans person and you are worried about this, you have every right to be worried. If you are frightened and you are scared, you have every right to be frightened and scared. But I want to tell you something. Keep living your life. Do not let them force you back into the closet. Do not let them make you afraid to transition. Just living your existence is perfectly lawful. If you are not encouraging violence, if you are not inciting violence, then you're not doing anything that would warrant calling you a terrorist. It is ridiculous at this point for them to suggest such a thing. If they're going to say that they're going to take your YouTube channel down, or they're going to deny you the ability to publish a book, or they're going to get you fired from your job for being trans, for passing something like this, then make them do it. Don't roll over ahead of time for them. Don't delete all of your social media and get rid of your accounts preemptively. Make them fight for every single inch. Everything that they want to take from you, make them fight for it. Because I promise you, there will be an army, a litany of civil rights attorneys lining up to sue over this. If Brian Kilmeade doesn't count as a domestic terrorist, if Mark Robinson doesn't count as a domestic terrorist, if the KKK doesn't count as a domestic terrorist, the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, January 6th rioters, if these aren't domestic terrorists who literally killed cops and caused cops to commit suicide, and yet Trump pardoned them, if none of them count as domestic terrorists, then we are not domestic terrorists. The FBI can't just declare that, oh, well, a trans person has an ideology that automatically makes them a terrorist. If they're making that claim, they would have a burden of proof in a legal court to prove this. And I promise, if they do something like this, there will be a class action lawsuit against it. And it may take a while to get it overturned, and we might have to fight this up until the midterms, where hopefully we can take back the House and put an end to this nonsense. But a while back, I did a debate, by the way, with Pine Creek. And I just want to say, because in that debate, Pine Creek said that I was exaggerating and I was worried over nothing, and saying that, Trump has nothing to do with Project 2025, and they're not actually going to try to pass any of this stuff. Well, let me just say to him, first and foremost, eat fucking crow. On top of that, I expect you to change your position on trans issues now, right? You said you wouldn't support something like this, that if they actually tried to pass this stuff and designate trans people as domestic terrorists, that you would fight against that with us. So hopefully the atheist community that seems like, oh, they're not sure about trans issues, or they think that trans issues aren't something that concerns them, ask yourself this. If they can just arbitrarily designate trans people as being domestic terrorists because there's 3 or 4 shooters, how long would it be before they're able to say, oh, there's a couple of atheist shooters, therefore atheists are now domestic terrorists? Because they were already gesturing toward nihilism. There was some other part of this where they're saying that nihilism is included in this. So I guess if you are a nihilist, then maybe you're a terrorist too. And all it takes to be a terrorist these days, apparently, is to get healthcare and to grow boobs, or to have your boobs removed. Whatever you want to do to your body. You having autonomy, you having bodily autonomy, that now makes you a terrorist, according to the Heritage Foundation, if it wasn't obvious of how extreme their belief system is. And from this point forward, I don't ever want to hear from anybody that trans people are exaggerating stuff, or that, oh, well, we were being dishonest or misrepresenting what they wanted, and that Trump's administration wouldn't actually do Project 2025. The Heritage Foundation, or it's the architects of Trump's policies. He's passed so much of Project 2025 already. And in Michigan, legislatively, they're trying to pass what they wanted to pass in Project 2025. So don't tell us this isn't their game plan. And if the FBI goes and labels us domestic terrorists, then it's just going to be litigation that we have to fight. It's bullshit. Taxpayer money is going to be wasted in the courts as they have to sort through what are the actual claims, what's the actual burden of proof. Trans people as a demographic are not violent people. They literally had to take down their own stats on domestic violence and extremism because there's only like, a tiny portion of trans people in there. They pulled that down to review it. Oh yeah, I'm going to trust the same organization to go and review that after they published all this misinformation about Tyler Robinson. They just keep changing their narrative. Oh, you know what they're not going to tell you is that his Steam handle was literally Donald Trump. But yeah, sure. Believe the FBI on this. I would believe the courts in discovery. I damn sure don't believe Kash Patel. The FBI at this point is just a political puppet of Trump. It is a farce. They've destroyed that institution, gutted it, and just put a whole bunch of yes men in it, in the same way that they've been trying to destroy other government departments. At the end of the day, my message to trans people is to stay strong, love yourself, take a walk, go hang out with your friends, with your family, go hang out with people that respect you and love you. Do not get inundated with this rot. You are not all terrorists. We are not terrorists. This is ridiculous. I am more pissed off than anything else because at the end of the day, I get so tired of people saying, oh, well, being trans is your entire personality. Being trans is all you care about. That's not true. There are so many other things that I like and I enjoy. I enjoy video games. I like Elden Ring. I play World of Warcraft. I'm a writer. I like so many movies and stuff. I like going out for walks in nature. There are so many other things that I talk about and I do that have absolutely nothing to do with being trans whatsoever. Being trans affects me in the sense of my healthcare. It affects me in having insurance. It affects me in the type of medical needs that I have, and having access to estrogen. Those are the things that being trans affects me. And people around me, I go about my daily life and I don't think about any of this stuff. But then whenever I get online and I see that legislators are saying that we should be executed, influencers are saying that we should be labeled as terrorists, and groups like the Heritage Foundation, which most definitely is a Christian nationalist extremist group themselves, and yet not labeled terrorists, they say that we should be labeled terrorists. What happened to free speech and the marketplace of ideas? Oh no, that went out the window when they killed Charlie Kirk. Not Melissa Hortman, her husband, and their dog, not that assassination. That it wasn't terrorism when they shot, Club Q. It wasn't terrorism when they shot the Pulse nightclub and stacked up dozens and dozens and dozens of dead LGBT people. And that was done ostensibly by a Muslim and a Christian. And yet those aren't terrorists. People going and trying to peel out in their cars and destroy rainbow crosswalks, preachers showing up outside of pride parades and holding up signs saying that we're all going to go to hell, and calling us the F slurs and holding up signs saying God hates us. Pat Robinson of what was it, 700 Club, when he was still alive, saying that Katrina hit New Orleans because of LGBT people, and calling national disasters the fault of LGBT people. Rush Limbaugh, when he was alive, on his show, holding up a tally celebrating the amount of LGBT people that were dying of AIDS. Okay, that's not terrorism for him to suggest that it's a good thing that we all die. Stone Toss making comics celebrating trans people committing suicide, or all the other right-wing people online that essentially every single time there's a headline about a trans person either suiciding out or being murdered by somebody, and they're just posting there, oh, we got another one. That's not terrorism. Why? Because we had freedom of speech in this country. Because that preacher had a right to go and say whatever he wanted to about my community. Because Rush Limbaugh, as terrible as what he said, he had a right to say whatever it was that he was going to say. But now, this is going well beyond censorship of the First Amendment. They're saying that not only do you not have a right, do I not have a right to exist? Do I not have a right to write down my thoughts or post to my private Facebook? They're saying that you don't have a right to know about trans people. You don't have a right to know about our history. You don't have a right to even know us, to talk to us. If you felt the need to try to convince us to convert to Christianity and change from our wicked ways, that like, oh, well, you can't even talk to us. We're so extreme that if you even interact with us, if you perceive us, that is somehow illegal, at least according to some of the state legislatures in Michigan. So yeah, I'm pretty pissed off about this. No, I mean, there's going to be people that show up in my comments, almost certainly. They're like, oh, cope and seethe, or, haha, we got you, or whatever. Like, I don't care. This is a farce at the end of the day. If they do try to pass something like this, they're going to just get sued into the ground, and you're going to waste your taxpayer monies going at trying to fight to argue that trans people are some type of ideology. This is as stupid, like, as if our government didn't learn its lesson in declaring a war on terror, and now they're going to declare a war on transgenderism, right? They never found those fucking WMDs, unless these are WMDs. I mean, like, fuck. It's so stupid. It is laughably absurd. And hopefully, maybe, if other countries see what's going on over here, like Canada, or some of these European countries, France, Ireland, some countries that are not rolling back LGBT rights, maybe they will see what's happening over here and offer us asylum or expand asylum. Because the entire idea of like, oh, well, you don't need asylum yet, was because there was the idea like, well, you're not in danger enough. Or maybe there are states that you can go to that are blue states where you could still be safe. Well, if the FBI, that is like a national arm of the DOJ, decides to label every single trans person as a terrorist, and then they're going to advocate that we should all be like rounded up and put into asylums, or, remember, if we say the word camps, that's going too far. Now we're exaggerating and being ridiculous. Well, what the hell do you think they're going to do with a bunch of terrorists if they gather up a bunch of terrorists? We already see what they've done to the Hispanic population, immigrants coming over here, even people that had green cards that have visas, that are here perfectly legally, have been here for decades, that were veterans of our own military, that did nothing wrong at all, that followed every single legal avenue that they were supposed to follow. And what did they do? They still rounded them up and sent them to CCOT, or they put them in alligator Alcatraz. And all these Republicans are like, oh, this is hilarious and this is so wonderful, whatever else. Right? But that doesn't count as terrorism. Our government doing that to legal citizens, denying them habeas corpus, violating the prima facie laws regarding immigration, that doesn't count as terrorism. Because, well, no, that's lawful. It's not lawful. They're breaking the law. They're violating these people's rights. That's against the law. But, and they're covering their faces. We don't know who these ICE agents are. We don't know if they're even necessarily legitimate ICE agents. The person that killed Melissa Hortman, they impersonated ICE to go carry out their assassination. They impersonated a cop. So, like, at the end of the day, don't tell me that we're being ridiculous when we're worried about the possibility of them trying to institutionalize trans people for no justified reason, simply for our existence, not because we're advocating violence, not because we're going and shooting. Look, if there's a trans person and they have armed themselves up and they go to shoot a place up or whatever, arrest them, prosecute them. They did something illegal. I don't support mass shooters. Surprise. I don't support extrajudicial violence against anyone. And I find it bizarre that the same people that will look at what's going on with Israel, and they can't say that what's happening in Gaza, they can't say that that's a genocide. They can't say it, despite the fact that the UN literally just came out and said that this is 100% a genocide. We're still being told by Republicans that that's not a genocide. But trans people existing are terrorists. It's ridiculous. Don't let it get you down. Don't let them force you back in the closet. All right? Stay strong, stay safe. I'm not saying you shouldn't have some kind of plan, that you shouldn't have a passport, that you shouldn't be looking at certain states or certain countries. There are like Mexico, Canada, Ireland, France. A lot of these countries, you can just take a trip over there and you can stay for like 90 to 180 days. Check with each country before you go over there. But you can roughly stay over there without an extended visa. If they end up passing something like this and they designate you as a trans person, as a terrorist, just go file asylum. Just go to one of those countries immediately, as soon as this is announced that it's actually passed, and say like, hey, I'm filing asylum, and you have legitimate fear of what's going to happen to you based on what has happened to the migrant population that had not done anything illegal, but is still being rounded up. You have a solid case there to argue that, like, look, the FBI is a national arm of the DOJ that they are calling that they're trying to call the Department of War instead of Department of Defense, right? Like, this administration has made it clear, erasing, information about trans people offline from their websites. They're going out of their way to try to label us terrorists as much as possible, trying to remove information about us. Do not let them get you down. We have existed all throughout history. We existed and we survived the 50s and the 60s, where that was way worse than these times of what they would do to us back then. The difference is we actually have civil liberties now. We have the ability to sue the government for what they're doing. We have the ACLU. We can actually fight this in the courts. In the 50s and 60s, there's like no standing in the courts for people like us. And I'm not saying that the courts always get it right, but there are protections. And when this stuff passes, they're going to try to take some time to come up with a list of trans people and all this sort of stuff like that. So at the end of the day, you still have time. Don't feel defeated. Don't feel like you've been ground it like into the dirt yet. As I said, stay positive, stay strong. We're going to keep arguing and fighting against this garbage. We will still be here. Do not let them frighten you out of your own life. We already have enough of this. Obviously, this type of rhetoric is going to cause psychological harm to trans people. Oh no, that's one of the things that they're going to say makes me a terrorist. I'm just saying that we know that when you abuse trans people, when you threaten to harm us or whatever else, it increases the rate of self-harm. And if you need to call somebody or talk to somebody, please do. Please utilize suicide hotline preventions before making any like rash decisions. We can survive this. We can get through this. And even at the end of the day, like hopefully during midterms, we'll flip some of this stuff around to actually be able to put a stopgap to some of this. And at the end of the day, Donald Trump is not going to be in office forever. And almost guaranteed at the state of the economy, the price of groceries right now, the price of gas right now, the amount of layoffs that are going on at different companies, the trade wars, us illegally committing crimes, attacking Venezuelan ships. Their administration is losing popularity. They cannot maintain this. They are very, very hated right now, and for good reasons. They're a bunch of liars and thieves that are trying to steal your money and give it up to the wealthy. And they're trying to cut Medicaid. They're want to cut Medicare. They want to aim at Social Security eventually. Mark my words. They want to aim for Social Security. But stay strong. We will get through this. And I will see you in the next video. I'm sorry for the rant. This pissed me off so much. I had to say something about it. Anyway, peace. Have a good day.